All right, welcome back. This is the final teaching of Track 2 Startups Plus, our practical teachings on soft skills. And this week we're going to wrap things up with active listening, or sometimes it's called effective listening. Active or effective listening. Now, we've said over and over throughout this track that these are skills that'll help you in pretty much any area of life, particularly any job that you would have. This is very true in this case of active and effective listening. This applies in every situation, especially relational situations. Employees need to be active listeners to their bosses, and bosses need to be actively listening to their employees and their customers. Children need to be actively listening to their parents, and parents need to be actively listening to their children. Husbands need to be active and effective listeners with their wives. So what is active listening? Active listening involves attentively seeking to understand the speaker's message rather than passively hearing the words that a speaker says. Active listening involves attentively seeking to understand a speaker's message rather than passively hearing the words that the speaker is saying. You see, just because you heard the words doesn't mean you understood the meaning. We call this parroting. A parrot can mimic your words without ever understanding the meaning. So active listening involves understanding the meaning, the message behind what's being said. Active listeners also provide verbal and nonverbal feedback to show their sincere investment in what the speaker is sharing. Now, I don't know of any better example of this than Laura Miller while her husband, Terry Miller, is preaching and teaching on Sunday mornings. If you attend our church and want to truly understand active listening, watch Laura Miller when her husband, Terry, is teaching and preaching. She nods with every good point made. She laughs at every joke. When she's contemplative, her eyebrows kind of tense up and furrow. And when she comes to an understanding of a point, her eyebrows raise up. She's never on her phone, not even taking notes. She's always making eye contact and following Pastor Terry around the room. That is active listening. So active listeners provide verbal and nonverbal feedback to show their sincere investment in what the speaker is sharing. And by the way, this has very little to do with public speaking type engagements. This has far more to do with conversational listening, because active listening can actually help build trust within a conversation and thereby allow the speaker to communicate more easily, more openly, and more honestly. Because when someone is actively listening, when they're completely engaged in what you're saying, it's much more easy to be authentic and even vulnerable. Author Diana Senechal says, listening involves a certain surrender, a willingness to sit with what one does not already know. Listening requires us to stretch a little beyond what we know and expect or want. I know I'm not the only person who runs through conversations in their head in advance, especially the difficult conversations, the hard conversations, even the arguments and the debates that are going to be had. I'm not the only person who does that. In fact, I believe most of us run through the conversations in advance. And then what happens is we have a plan of attack, and we simply wait for the right cues to initiate our assault. Now, sure, maybe that's a little extreme, but you get the point. Our brains are firing so rapidly that while in the middle of conversations, we're already coming up with responses and questions and justifications and excuses and counterpoints. And every moment that our brain is firing, trying to come up with what we're going to say next, we're not actually listening. And look, I believe everything in this course is incredibly valuable. We've talked about time management. We've talked about taking initiative. We've talked about giving and receiving critical feedback. We've talked about critical thinking and problem-solving skills. And we've talked about teamwork. But I'm telling you, as a leader, start with this: active and effective listening. So often as leaders, we're so busy trying to tell everyone else about our vision or about our mission or about our way of doing things that we completely forget to listen. And when we become good, active, and effective listeners, it changes the dynamics and the cultures on our team. It builds teamwork. It builds vulnerability and authenticity. It shows our team members that their voice actually matters. And it does. So let's go through 10 quick tips as to how to be better, more effective, active listeners. Number 1 is face the speaker and maintain eye contact. Parents, you'll understand this one. When you're trying to talk to your kids, you want them to look you in the eye. Why? Because it is a tell on whether or not they're paying attention. And we're supposed to do unto others as we would have them do unto us, right? So when other people are talking, face them and maintain eye contact. Number 2, be attentive but relaxed. Be attentive but relaxed. Nobody wants tension. Nobody wants anxiety. So make sure that you're paying attention, that you're maintaining eye contact and all that kind of stuff, but chill out a little bit. Keep the atmosphere a little loose. Be relaxed. Number 3 is keep an open mind. Again, we often have conversations planned out well in advance. If you want to be an active and effective listener, keep the mind clear. Keep an open mind. Number 4, listen to the words and try to picture what the speaker is saying. I'm a very visual person, so I find this to be incredibly helpful. Listen to the words and try to picture what the speaker is saying. This helps you kind of put yourself in their shoes a little bit. And for us visual learners, it helps us really grasp the concepts. Number 5, don't interrupt and don't impose your solutions. There's kind of a joke on staff at the Sound, which is that I always have 2 things to say. And I generally start by saying 2 things. What we've come to realize is that I say that because generally I get interrupted before I can get to the second point. So subconsciously, I've come to warn people in advance that there's more coming because nothing is worse than getting interrupted. So don't interrupt and don't impose your solutions either. Not every conversation needs to fix something. Sometimes people just need to be understood. So don't interrupt and don't impose solutions. Number 6 is wait for the speaker to pause to ask clarifying questions. This obviously goes hand in hand with the interruption thing, but let's focus on the clarifying questions part. I believe active and effective listeners start by asking questions rather than making assumptions. And notice it's phrased as clarifying questions, not, what the heck is wrong with you? Or, how could you possibly believe that? Those types of questions, not helpful at all. Ask clarifying questions. How did you come to that conclusion? What made you believe that or think that? And this leads right into number 7, which is ask questions only to ensure understanding. Again, your job in this is to be active and effective in your listening. And so ask questions that ensure understanding, not that lead people to your conclusions. Number 8, try to feel what the speaker is feeling. Now, I know that this can be really difficult for people with leadership type personality types. Most of the time, people in leadership positions are not exactly the most feely type of people. But do everything that you can to put yourself in their shoes and to empathize with them to feel what the speaker is feeling. Number 9, give the speaker regular feedback. This might be as simple as, or, oh, I see. That makes sense. Little grunts and mm-hms can go a long way in connecting with whoever you're talking with. Give them regular feedback. And number 10 is to pay attention to what isn't said. Watch the nonverbal cues. What's their posture like? Are they able to maintain eye contact, or are they kind of sheepishly looking away? Are they fidgety? What are they doing with their hands? Are they swallowing a lot? Are they blinking really hard often? All of these can be nonverbal clues to tell you how they're feeling in that moment, which can add depth to what they're saying verbally. So if you want to be a more active and effective listener, Face the speaker and maintain eye contact. Be attentive but relaxed. Keep an open mind while they speak. Listen to the words and try to picture what they're saying. Don't interrupt or impose your own solutions. Wait for the speaker to pause and ask clarifying questions to them. Ask questions that ensure understanding. Try to feel what they're feeling. Give them regular feedback. And pay attention to the nonverbal cues. Becoming an active and effective listener will revolutionize every aspect of your life, from work to school to interactions with your neighbors and family to close-knit relationships that you have. This one soft skill can permeate every aspect of your life. And honestly, if you learn how to be an active listener, your leadership will go through the roof. There is no ceiling for active listeners.